Welcome to Coding with Style. It's a speech which from the masterclass yesterday, I did yesterday Scripting for Artists Advanced course for 7 hours. So I compressed it with one topic to here, and it's mainly focused on style. And you will see what I mean with that. Thank you for everyone who is attending. I know this is not endgame or something, but I hope I can share some value with you. So just to introduce myself, my name is Alexander Richter. I'm currently coming from France, Dwarf Animation Studio, and I'm mainly a technical director. I'm also doing consultant for technical workflow optimization, and I'm doing lecturing like masterclasses, speeches, and I'm also on YouTube where I have like a course which is called Scripting for Artists. So for everyone who's kind of want to go the more scripting road as an artist, where you divide yourself from the current pattern. I worked on some mainly animation films in different companies, from Framestore to Dwarf to Studio Zoe, Macrovision, and I studied at the Film Academy in Germany. And one of the projects I was working on is called Breaking Point, which won the VES award. I'm mentioning it because I built the pipeline for Breaking Point, which is an open source pipeline, and it's called Plex. You can find it on GitHub. And it's basically like creates a basic structure for every project. And you can either implement it in your personal project because the license is MIT's, so you can use it for whatever you like and change it to whatever you need. And this is just the surface. This is like the 10% or something which you all flashy see, but 90% is about you change configuration file and everything changed and it adapts to you. You throw scripts and plugins into a specific folder. They're part of your pipeline. You add environment variables and it works. And from that on, I noticed like a thing where I changed my behavior of how I see Python. This talk will be mainly about Python, but because it's like the standard scripting language in visual effects and animation, but it doesn't matter because style is everywhere. You can do bad style in C++ as bad style in Mel. And this is what we're talking about. And here's the series I have. I did scripting for artists for Nuke, Maya, 3ds Max, Python itself, and Windows. Coding style. Coding is an art, and there's a misconception now of like you just get the work done. Because code creates content, while style creates collaboration. So basically, you write code, it works, you get the job done, your batches, whatever you need is fine. But then someone else or you, three months later, pick it up, make a hotfix, make an update, make something, and it looks like trash. Like you don't know where it is, you don't know what it is, you don't understand the basic structure and stuff like that. So basically, while you code and perform what you need, the style decides if someone understands your code or if someone needs like hours and days to even like understand the basic structure and where to add. And that's why we're here. And we do like very simple stuff. You see, it's like not rocket science, but still I see so many people, especially when they come from the practical side and not from the academic side, I see a lot of people fail in this regard. So if you can make code that people put on their cars or planes, then you made sexy code. That's the idea. So let's have a look, for example, on the basic import. This is like an import you see in a lot of scripts. And it's like a jungle. You don't even know what is happening there, what is what belongs to what. So if you see that, your entry point to a script is basically what is happening here. I changed that to this. And you instantly see there it's recognizable and you see specific patterns inside that. So how we get from the left to the right side, because it's basically absolutely the same. One thing I do in the imports is I put it into chunks, into logical chunks, mostly divided in 3 ones. So the first one is basically the standard API. So in this case, it's Python, so it's the Python API. So the first chunk is basically your OS, your sys, your time, your datetime, and stuff like that. So basically, the first thing you see, you know, okay, this is standard. The second part is your third-party APIs. It can be Qt, PyQt. It can also be Maya, Nuke, Houdini, doesn't matter. So you know, after the Python API, there will come the third-party API. So you see, okay, are there Maya scripts used inside this, Houdini scripts, something. And last but not least is the custom API. So your typical company scripts, your personal scripts, the modules you import to use them in your loggings and stuff like that. And this is the third part. If you start to look at the import, you instantly recognize, okay, default, third party, custom. And then you can see from the imports already what awaits you down under. Very simple concept. A lot of people do it wrong. I don't know why. And you can throw in a little bit style, and I like to do that. Make it steps. It looks pleasant. We're talking about style, so why not? By the way, like who can program or doing scripting at all? Okay? Who kind of can modify Python or some Mel scripts? Who is like capable of doing a little bit stuff? Okay. A perfect environment for me, because for me, I'm doing scripting for artists, and the way I try to teach is basically telling people you can do it, and you don't need 70% of the stuff. Just learn what you need, and that's where we're going here. So one of the things of style is PEP 8. So if you never heard of PEP 8, it's the style guide of Python. Google it, it's really good. It's kind of long, but a lot of things we use here are either PEP 8 or PEP 8 interpretation. For example, if you put everything in one line as an import os, re, sys, nah, that's not PEP 8. PEP 8 means import in every line. Okay? Okay. But you can also interpret from readability. This is one of the core features of PEP 8. And in this case, for example, if we import from Qt or PyQt or PySite or Mel or whatever, we put all the imports of this thing in one line, which is fine because you still know it's part of Qt, and it's like a combined bunch. So we can break it, but always have a good reason to break it. And again, simple stuff, but a lot of people do it wrong. Next, variables. After the imports, we have mostly the basic variables, especially constants. And in this case, I always do separator. Put some horizontal lines in your code. Separate specific chunks. And the next one, put a small description of what it is, a one-word thing. Like, variables, great. Functions, awesome. And yeah, so this is very easy. But, and the next thing is, if you use Python, for example, compared to programming language like C++, you don't have to define your type. So you can say title equals 5. But you can also say title equals a string like title of this name. So what happens very fast is sometimes you forget what type something was and you override it. And it sometimes just Python flips and says, like, I cannot do that. But sometimes, and it's even worse, Python says, oh, 5 times 3 is 15. By accident, override it with a string. 5 string multiplied with 3 is 555. Because you multiply this 5 string 3 times and combine it again. And the worst case, you save this kind in your database, and after weeks, suddenly everything breaks because your data is corrupt. So one of the biggest style no-goes also in PEP is always be consistent with the type of variables. And even if that's against, like, the whole concept of Python is against its own Zen because it says be always explicit and not implicit. But in this case, it's not. This is an example. You see pi as a number. But then later, oh yeah, I want to describe it also. You override it. And then even later, you say sphere volume. Boom. It explodes because it can multiply a sequence by non-integer of type float. Because you try to float combine with string. So always stay at the type, and if you need a different type, create a new variable. Very simple. A lot of people do this wrong. Again, we are talking about style. So style is also making it better readable. And in this case, just align your equal signs. So for example, you see the top and in the middle. It's absolutely the same code, but a little bit easier to read, because what we did a table. Left side, right side. Very clear, and we did it just with some spaces on the variable side. Of course, don't overdo it, because, for example, if it's called functional call and the other image, it's a little bit too much. And it breaks the whole thing, because, again, the whole mantra is readability. In terms of functions, it's basically the same rule as before. I will not go into function naming and variable naming. It should be clear that the name should reflect what it does, what it has. But the same thing, you can use horizontal lines and a small comment just to identify what the whole chunk does. And what I do is I have multiple ones. I mean, functions maybe not the best naming here, but the rest is very clear. So you have, for example, your press events, you have your change events, and later at the end you have your start and create events to start and create this process. And if you do like 5 or 6 of them in your 500 lines or whatever code you basically skip through that and see just by the horizontal lines where you're searching something. Very easy. I rarely see that. And again, just try it out and we'll see if it's something you like to do in your own code. So basically, if you see in the first line, it's the function open ABC and you give it a path. A second line, again, open ABC, but you also define what you want to give. So you call your keyword argument. So you say path equals the string of the path. And in this case, maybe it's not so important. It's very obvious. I mean, if you want to open an ABC file, it's kind of, you need a path. But in the next case, for example, print checked header, you throw in 2 strings and a variable. And let's pretend the function call is completely somewhere else as the function definition. So it's maybe in another file, maybe 500 lines somewhere else. And so you have to jump around to find like what it does. And if you want to modify something, you're not sure which type you have to throw in. What is the difference between the first and the second? Maybe the first is the title and the second is the description, or the first is the description and the second is the title. You don't know. So the best way, and I would say the always way you can say, is to use the keyword arguments every time. Every time you call a function, just use the keyword argument. A, you can rearrange it because the order, it's not important anymore. And B, you make it clear what the first, the second, and the third argument are for. Title, content, and function. I don't know why no one's kind of used that, but because it takes time probably. But again, in 3 months, you don't know what this function can do. And if you see it again, you're like, oh yeah, sure. And one thing everyone does is kind of, it's the basic thing. If you do, for example, a thesis, write a book or something like that, one thing you do, the better you get, is the more complicated you get. With your skills, which advance, you basically start on, oh yeah, I know so many complicated and great words, like Latin words or something. Oh, I can build a sentence like through 20 lines or something. So great. The same thing happens for programming and scripting. So basically, everyone who starts to see things like lambda and stuff like that, it's like, oh yeah, I can throw like everything in one line. Like basically, do the whole operation in one line. So sexy, so easy. Try to read it. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know what it is. It's just like, I think there's 10 operations in this small thing of one line. Hate it. Don't want to see that in any code. And probably, if I would look in the header, search the guy who created it and send him a grateful email. But there's an option for that. And it's the same option your teacher will tell you if you write a thesis. Make simple sentences. And the same thing applies for Python or at any languages. One statement per line. Every line should be one thing. One action, one change, whatever. So in this case, so for example, we have if, for, and then what is happening in each line. Don't try to compress it, because in the end, you know it's yourself. If things get compressed, and even if your skill is good, doesn't matter. You still need some time to understand, because like, come on, the first one is not easy to read, even if you are an expert in Lambda use. But I have an exception for that, a very rare one. You sometimes can combine them in one line. A, if they're still simple, and B, if they're just a helper. For example, you have a script where you want to be sure that the folder is there. So it's not like breaks because the folder doesn't exist. So you basically, if no folder, create. This thing is like, it's just like a rare case, so you throw it in to have it to be 100% sure. This could be a one-liner. It shouldn't be big. It shouldn't be complicated. So in this case, I'm absolutely fine with that, because you basically go through that. Oh yeah, this is a helping thing, next. I'm a little bit biased with comments. I'm not a fan, generally, besides horizontal lines, as you could see, because they tend to be that way, and this way, and this way. Like you can throw comments which are longer than the whole function. You have this Google-style comments, you have this after this PEP 257 comments, you have the same line comments and stuff like that. I can tell you why I don't like comments, and it's basically because comments means you failed. Comments means, in a way, you failed with the naming of your variable and your functions, with the order and the structure of your code, because it should be clear by the name what it does, kind of. It should be clear by the name of the arguments. It should be clear by the name of the functions. It should be clear in the whole structure of the script where you are. Like if you're in the creating files and folders, you know what it is. It should be clear from the return. It should be clear from the script itself, what's the idea of the whole thing, and stuff like that. Nevertheless, I'm not against comments at all. It's fine. It's a good thing, but have in mind, before you do a comment, can you do it better? Can you make it clear without one? And use comments more as a breaker to understand, oh yeah, here's something I start. Or comments sometimes as a helper. But I'm still biased to this kind of, basically, if you see the Google-style comments, especially in our industry, if you're not the biggest software developer ever with basically Windows or Autodesk on your agenda, you write a comment which basically explains what it does, which is basically in the name, what arguments, which is basically in the name of the arguments, and what's the return, which could still be basically in the name of what it does, like the function name. So I'm biased to that. Try to find your own way, but try it with avoiding comments. Still, if you don't find a better way, use it, and then slowly progress from that. I have some extras, which are a little bit more unusual. One thing I learned through writing like normal books and stuff, or theses, is a review on paper. I personally never heard that someone say it to me. I mean, I did it when I did an academy. I did my exams on paper, which was like the strangest thing ever. If you do coding on paper, so you try to write a C code on paper, it's very strange. But I noticed a trend when I print out, I mean, you shouldn't print out like 50 pages or something, but if you have like a 10-page thing or something going on, you still struggle, you want to optimize, print it out, take it on your travel or whatever, and then you notice a trend of you focus differently on different tasks when you have it on paper, because you don't have the debugging options, you don't have the autocomplete and stuff like that, so basically sometimes you cannot 100% understand every step. But you will start to think about basic structure thing, because now you feel like, your brain doesn't focus on functionality. It focuses on structure, it focuses on naming, it focuses on repetition. Is there a loop you used before and maybe can avoid? You can just delete them. Is this really the best name? Is name the good name for name? And so I noticed this thing when you have it on paper, your brain shuts to a different direction and you can make a better style code. And I can recommend it, try it out. Code reviews, I mean, this is a thing, especially if you're working in the software industry. Basically, a colleague or a supervisor looks at your code, gives you feedback. One of the best thing ever, rarely I see it, especially in the visual effects and animation industry, but basically it's you can standardize the whole company and the whole department. Everyone, if they say, please do this kind of comments, you do that, and every code looks like it's from the same person. Great. You can learn new things. Someone can say, oh, maybe you used Lambda here, or maybe you use this in front here, maybe you multi-thread here, or something like that. And suddenly oh yeah, this is a great idea. I will use it every time now. Perfect. And it's kind of like appreciation. I mean, someone looks at your thing and gives you feedback. There's nothing more than appreciated than that someone cares. This one is hard, but even if it's not provided by your company, you can always ask a colleague and say oh, come on, have 10 minutes, just a quick overview if you see something which is odd. And suddenly you have someone who has a fresh eye on your code where you say, oh, this is everything is clear, and then someone says I don't know what's happening here. And last but not least, I mean, we are scripting for artists course, you can also always install a plugin PEP8, so it will correct you. I mean, I personally hate this thing because it's always wants me to do specific stuff. But at the beginning, it's perfect. It tells you if your line is too long, if you maybe don't use the right appropriation for that. So Yeah. And for me, this is what good Python code looks like. So this is like, you can see it on the left, there's basically all the things I said. I put them in chunks, I put like separators in that and stuff like that. But also if you see on the right side, like the whole overview, you see it's formed. You see there are breaks. I mean, here it's a little bit cluttered, but here you can see there are clearly blocks in that. And it's predefined. And that's why I say it's like code can be sexy. And if you see, you can instantly see if something is pretty and sexy, even code, you know it's kind of at least decent. We are not talking always with the communication, because I said like style is collaboration. Collaboration is code collaborates with other scripters, but UI collaborates with artists. What we have in visual effects and animation at the moment is we have PySide and Python, which we can use in most DCC package. For example, this is a loading tool, which is basically in Nuke, Maya, Houdini, and 3ds Max. And it looks the same, it works the same, perfect. My idea of good UI is create an UI you would like to have on your phone. And it's sometimes embarrassing. Like, especially if you look into pipelines, it's like, what is this? This looks like Windows 95. And you have a pipeline TD coming to you like, oh, I create a thing. I have to type everything. Like, this looks like not even like gray background, like button at something. Like everything is like shit. So I don't understand why we cannot have the standards of what we have on our phone. We have also on our daily working life, professional life. There's one discussion for scripters. I have it on every company I'm working in. Should we use Designer or should we code everything from scratch? Absolutely. For me, this is not a discussion. If you not have a perfect good reason not to use the Designer, use the Designer. You have clear separation. You open a Designer. You drag and drop your whole UI. You can do it 90% of the time, whatever you need. You see what you get. You have an UI file. And then you go into a Py file, and then you implement and change and adapt and create all the function it needs. There's a benefit to that. Your colleague can open Designer, see what you got, what you did, throw things in, throw things out. He doesn't have to understand code. He just opens it, see what you did, and change that. And even a second, he can use it for coding. He can click on something in the Designer, and he knows which variable it is. You can click on the publish button, and it's called button publish, and then like, oh yeah, I know where it is. But sometimes it's not so obvious, so you can click on it, see where it is. I think it's great. And it's much more collaborative in the end than just throwing like Python code for UI and Python code for function. So one of the basic things, like we go a little bit into design here because again, collaboration, like people have to understand what you do, is the Z pattern. It's a very basic design rule, and it's basically our behavior of how we interpret information. And in the Western world, we interpret information as we read. So we read from left to right, from top to bottom. And what creates? It creates a Z pattern. From left to right, then we go left again and right. And an easy way to create a decent UI, where you instantly kind of understand what's happening, is to use that. For example, this is a save tool. On the left, you see a screenshot of the current saved scene. On the right, you see the information of which is the file name, the comment if you need one. On the left, you see down under, you see potential comments if something breaks, if something not okay with the scene, or you have to know about something. And on the right, it's the save button, the accept button. So the end of the thing. And you can throw the set button basically on every UI and kind of make it better with that. Let's see if someone doesn't work with that. Trello. Every time it annoys me if I want to use a Trello card, because the save button is on the left, and I'm searching it always on the right. And I saw a lot of people doing the same thing. They're basically like, oh no, left. So basically the positioning is strange, but they're offender of multiple things. The colors is strange. Like save is green, the cancel is kind of non-existing. Their labels are colored. Where should I look? And the other one is mixed symbols. Come on. They call it save, and they call the other one X. Like, what? So you see, even with this kind of very small UI, you can mix up a lot of things. And if it's intentional, it's fine. You can mix up stuff, whatever you want. I don't say this is like per se wrong, but I know from myself and my view on that, I'm getting confused. And it takes like a milliseconds of what is happening, and then okay, fine. If you create UI, don't throw things in and then expect it to work, because the moment someone uses it, they will break it. They will change the size will change because the information is bigger, the size will change because the user manually drags your UI to infinity. If you throw in layouts, which is a little bit clunky in the beginning, like horizontal layouts and vertical layouts, you can basically compress your stuff to whatever size it needs to be. And it takes a little practice, but I can tell you, the moment you try to get better in UI and make it portable, you cannot go away without layouts. One thing I would like to give you is a good thing I noticed for myself and I used in my open source pipeline is parenting UIs. I hear it a lot, like people, let's create a template. Let's have a template for the company. Let's have a template for this project. So we have one UI, and then we implement it, and we can use it. Some people create style sheets or whatever, like XML style sheets, and then they import it there. I have a better one. For example, if you see this is IRLoad, this is a loading tool for shots and assets, normal thing. It's basically built from IRUtil. And if you see, compare them, they look kind of the same. And they are kind of the same. Because IRUtil is used 35% of the code, while IRLoad is 54% of the code to create basically this here. So I created this UI. I even added a Python version of that with defining functions, defining some clicks, defining like filling out the comment section, filling out down under the help and stuff. So it's already set down. And then I throw then at the top just the loading screen. And what it creates in the end is basically this. I use 253 lines of code from IRUtil and 305 lines of code from IRLoad. And in total, I use 558 code to create one UI, but I split it in half. And the cool thing is also, if I change something on the IRUtil, on the template, it will of course change. If I want to have it red, it will be red. So I basically have one UI, defined all the functions even. If I have a progress bar, I can define that. I can create a function for a progress bar and just throw in numbers. Everything is already set as far as I can. And then I define IRLoad with changing stuff, hiding buttons which I don't need, changing the accept name and stuff like that. I basically created one thing, which is the original, which is the parent. And from that on, I get all my UIs. And it's very flexible, and it's kind of easy to use. And it's, again, you see what you get. You open IRUtil in Designer, change. I will not go into detail, but basically this is everything you need to implement it. You import IRUtil, then you put a parent class IRUtil to your new script. Then you initialize the IRUtil, you load the UI, change whatever you need, like resize it because it's a different size, it's a different title. Put in the top layer your new script, and then show it. And suddenly you have like a flexible system of two classes which combine. And you can combine this class with every other class. And it will have the style and have the functions and whatever you need. So let's wrap that up. And I have because I have like 3 other things I want to tell you. One thing, don't use cancel buttons. Stop that. I don't understand why it's still a thing to use cancel buttons. What do you want to cancel? It's a window. There's an X at the top. You have like double canceling. You can cancel it and you can close it. The only option why you shouldn't cancel something is if you want to break a process and you don't want to close the UI with that. Like you start something, stop. Okay, that's a fine thing. Or you want to have like yes or no question, of course. Yeah, save or cancel. Yes, that's definitely a thing. But in a normal UI where you basically open it up to accept whatever it wants or change something and accept, doesn't need. Keyboard driven. Put at least a basic return to your UI. You open your save file, you open your save UI, everything looks fine, enter, return. Finished. And last but not least, use tooltips. Especially if you're in Designer, you basically click on something, go into tooltips, write the tooltip, and it's finished. And you will not imagine how often people look at tooltips, they hover over something else. I'm not sure if this button or this button is what I want, what I need. And they're like, oh yeah, now I know. Doesn't matter what you take from this talk. This is the most important thing I would like to share with you. Code creates content, and style creates collaboration. And if you create code, it's great if it performs well, but always think about someone else will read it, and you don't want to be this other one who has to read it. Try to make the best you can do. And with small changes like this pip8 or what I showed you, you can make it not even flexible, you can make it kind of worthwhile. You see it and it's like, I'm proud that it looks so good, you know? If you're interested in more, you can always visit me on my pages. I have, like, again, YouTube, Alexander Richter TD, or write me at alexanderrichter@gmail.com. And if you have questions or you want to know more, I did a masterclass yesterday, Scripting for Artists Advanced, and I talked about this and other things. Thank you that you are here. I think we have now the question section or something. Yes. I don't know if someone has a question to this. Shouldn't be any questions left. This should be very clear.
Actually, the only question I have is you mentioned about code reviews.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could describe what a code review is not. Because the context I would give is I'm a designer, so I went for a number of years where you had design reviews, and the design review really got changed into more of a design critique. That's really what it is. So it's not just, I don't like that color. It's more around, hey, this is not right, usability-wise. So I was just curious when you talked about code reviews, what a code review is not.
Oh, that's a good question, because I think the same thing as bad meetings, you have bad code reviews. So basically, a code review should be where you have someone who is either better than you or someone who has a different focus. For example, I'm very UI-driven and artistic-driven, so I like to have things which the artist will use. Other like performance. They don't care about the artist. They more like to have a performance. First thing, you find a person you trust that he will add to your stuff. Second thing is basically you give someone your code. He takes some time with himself, look at your code, make marks and whatever, comes to you and sits with you down and basically goes through everything he sees with what he thinks needs. So one thing is definitely like the standards. Like the standards at all, like pip8 or the standards of your scripting or coding language is definitely a thing. But it can also be company standards. Maybe they define something they like to have always, so it looks like one thing. But also it's kind of readability. And he is basically like trying to understand it. So if he cannot understand, he can tell you like, I don't know what this is. So this is the next thing. And the fourth thing is basically optimization. Because you have there's pair programming where two people sit next to each other and try to solve a problem. It's the same thing with review, like basically two people try to solve a problem. He will not go into details into every line of your code, but he can see like, oh, this loop looks much bigger than it should be, and stuff like that. Or do you really need to divide this thing in 10 files? And so yeah, so basically it's a very broad stroke, but again, like a meeting, it should make, if nothing comes out of it, it's basically useless. So you have to have a change afterwards, and it should be a positive thing. And the last thing, to be attention on that, there's a lot of personality going on in programming and stuff, in art, of course, also the same. And you have to be clear about what is personal and what is like objective kind of, like what is kind of helps you and helps you to make the code better, and what is like, for example, the alignment of the equals. It's a personal thing. I would tell you that, but I wouldn't tell you like you have to do that. I hope this answers your question. Perfect.
So my question is, earlier you had mentioned something about getting rid of comments and things like that, but I know that to a certain extent that can't be true all the time, because if we're working with really heavy algorithms and things like that, I want to be able to go back to that 6 months later on and be like, why did I do it this way? So to what extent do you get rid of comments in the context that you were speaking of? Yeah,
I mean, basically, because it's a little bit like short-handed talk now and not the masterclass, you were missing like two main ingredients before, is a documentation. So a documentation should be this comment section. Basically, you have in the documentation how to use this tool, what is the main purpose of this tool, and stuff like that, and maybe more the quirks of the specific stuff. So a good documentation is basically the thing who gets rid of your comments, A. B, you have a header. You should put stuff into your header. What is this module? And if you have to write too much, it's like too big. So it's like this two are definitely already decimate your comment section very much. But else is, again, like, I mean, of course, it depends a little bit on where you're coming from. If you develop like like really software heavy things, or in physics or whatever, it can be really much harder to understand whatever this is, what you are trying to achieve. But I'm here more of the visual effects and animation side, and I'm rarely see really complex things. Mostly are very complicated. They're not complex. They're complicated, and they're like useless complicated. Like, for example, people who throw classes at everything. It's like, why is this app a class? You don't even use like instances of that, or you don't use any benefits. Why is not a function or something? And with this thing, you can blow it up, and then you need comments, because suddenly you have a lot of stuff going on just to create a class, just to establish the class and stuff like that. In our industry, I would say it's you can kill them, a lot of them. I mean, but yeah, of course, the same problem is a lot of people don't use comments at all. So it's like, it's not that I am saying like, oh yeah, this is already like a standard. No, it's not. But before I see comments, I would rather see like good naming, good structure, and good documentation.
I definitely agree with naming the functions properly, naming your variables properly, so that when you're going through and seeing that. I was just curious if, when you're getting rid of the comments. I guess for me, I handle both. I do a lot of UI scripting as well as more on the high end programming too. But for me, like I'm always there where I find something crazy with, Qt or something, where something crashes and you have to do a workaround. And so I note that on myself as a comment that, hey, I have to do this because, garbage collection forces it to go somewhere else, and it segfaults the application or things like that.
Yeah, so
basically a lot of things like that, where it's very specific to that particular function, why the function is working in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah. This is like, if you have, especially like going out of your way to do something because Maya, right, or do something because Windows or whatever. Yeah, of course. Then it helps maybe even the one-liner, in the same line kind of deletes files or whatever. Again, as I'm not saying comments are bad. I'm saying you basically comment it through your code. Like your code is the comment of what you do. Use comments, it's not a bad thing, but use them to divide, not to show failures in your time and refactoring.
Gotcha. Like over-commenting when it's not
Over-commenting,
necessary.
definitely. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Something else? Someone else? Something? Dramatic questions? No. Very clear. That's the reason I do these talks, because I believe we have to take in our hands a little bit that bring the artists and people who are not completely on the developer side into the realm, and give them the tools to make code, which even as a developer or something, we can say like, okay, I'll just integrate that because it's a good one. It's not like trash and I have to rebuild everything. So this is the basic idea, and we should always talk more about like how we collaborate instead of like overperform. And creating better code also means creating a stylish code, which is better understandable. So again, thank you very much for attending, and yeah, I hope you have a great week. I want to thank Effects America for inviting me to do the Masterclass Scripting for Artists Advanced and this speech of Coding with Style. Check out their next events. You can also find more content on my new website alexanderrichtertd.com with more masterclasses and personal coaching. All links in the description. And thank you to NordVPN, who are the sponsor of this video, for supporting the community and providing me with a safe internet connection without tracing and locks. Since I'm currently moved to France, it is also an easier way to connect to home and a big boost for Netflix and Amazon Prime to get your money's worth. Save up to 75% by using my NordVPN link in the description below. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.